I still remember the way Daniel's voice cracked when he said it. "Don't go back home, Grandma, please don't." Those words have been echoing inside me for days, clinging to every breath like a shadow that won't let go. I can still see his small hands gripping the edge of my coat, his eyes, wide, frightened, filled with a kind of sadness no child should ever carry. The train station smelled like rain and rust that morning. I stood there with my old suitcase, the handle wrapped in tape, waiting for a train that would take me back to a house I once called home and to a daughter I barely recognized anymore. The sky hung low and gray, as if it, too, carried something heavy it couldn't speak of. As the wind brushed past, I thought about how quiet it had been when Daniel whispered those words. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a warning, and that scared me more than anything. When I arrived, the house looked almost the same from the outside. 2 stories, white walls, the garden I planted years ago still standing, though the roses had long withered. But something about it felt hollow. The windows were too clean, too reflective, like eyes that refused to show what lay behind them. I stood at the gate for a long time, my heart pounding harder than it should have for someone my age. The last time I had walked through that gate, Alina, my daughter, had screamed at me that she never wanted to see me again. That was 6 years ago. "Mom!" Her voice pulled me back. I turned and saw her standing at the doorway. Perfect as always, hair tied back neatly, lips painted, clothes crisp and expensive. She looked like a woman who had everything under control. Only her eyes betrayed her. They flickered with something between discomfort and obligation. "Elena," I whispered. My throat felt dry, heavy. We stood there for a few seconds too long, the air thick between us. Then she stepped forward, wrapped her arms around me, lightly, briefly, like one would hug a stranger at a funeral. "It's good to see you," she said, though her tone didn't match her words. "You too," I replied. A lie, but what else could I say? Behind her, Daniel came running out from the hallway. "Grandma." He threw himself into my arms, and for a moment, the world softened. I held him close, feeling the warmth of his little body against mine, and my eyes burned. He smelled of soap and sunshine. "I missed you," he said, voice muffled in my coat. "I missed you too, sweetheart, so much." The house was beautiful, bigger than before, filled with glass, silver, and silence. The kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful but watchful. Elena's husband, Mark, greeted me at the living room door. His handshake was firm, too firm. He smiled, but only with his lips. "Welcome back, Mrs. Taylor," he said. "We weren't sure you'd come." I nodded, neither was I. He gave a polite laugh, the kind people use when they don't know what else to say, then turned back to his phone. The conversation was over before it began. Dinner that night was delicate. The sound of cutlery against plates filled the space that words didn't. Elena asked about my health, my medication, whether I was still living alone. Her tone was careful, almost rehearsed. "I'm fine," I said. "I get by." "That little apartment must be hard to manage," she remarked. "You're not young anymore, Mom. Maybe it's time to think about settling." "Settling?" I asked. She smiled thinly. "You know, being with family again, you shouldn't be alone." Something in the way she said it made me uneasy. It wasn't kindness. It was calculation, like she was saying what she thought she should, not what she felt. Daniel, oblivious to the tension, kept talking about school, his drawings, how he wanted to show me his room. His laughter was the only genuine sound in that house. I clung to it. That night, I lay awake in the guest room. The bed was soft, but I couldn't sleep. The rain had started again, tapping gently on the windows, a rhythm too familiar to ignore. I stared at the ceiling, remembering how it used to be when Alina was little. She would crawl into my bed after a nightmare, clutching her doll. "Mommy, promise you'll never leave me." "I promise," I used to whisper. "I'll always be here." But promises are fragile things. After her father died, I wasn't the same. Grief changes people, it hollows you out. I worked long hours, tried to keep food on the table, a roof over our heads. But she saw my exhaustion as neglect. And when I made mistakes, she remembered everyone. The night she left, her words cut deeper than any blade could. "You ruined everything. You ruined him. You ruin everyone, Mom." She had no idea how many nights I stayed awake afterward, whispering apologies into the dark. Apologies that never reached her. The next morning, the sun was too bright, almost cruel. Alina was already dressed, heels clicking against the marble floor as she prepared for work. Mark had gone early. The house smelled like fresh coffee and cold air. Daniel was at the table, drawing. He looked up as I entered and smiled. "Morning, Grandma, I drew you." He turned the paper toward me. A wobbly figure of an old woman with gray hair and a big smile, standing next to a little boy under a big tree. "It's us," he said proudly. "At your old house, you remember the tree." I nodded, touched. "Of course, your grandpa planted it before you were born." He frowned a little. "Mom said they might cut it down." The words hit me like ice. "Cut it down? Why?" He shrugged. "She said it's old, useless." I tried to smile, but my chest ached. That tree was more than wood and leaves. It was the only living thing that had watched our whole family grow, fight, and fall apart. Alina came in just then, car keys in hand. "Mom, don't fill his head with sentimental stories, okay? It's just a tree." "It's not just a tree," I murmured. She sighed, rolling her eyes slightly. "We'll talk later, I'm late." Her perfume lingered long after she left, sweet, expensive, and suffocating. Later that day, I wandered through the house, running my fingers along the furniture, the frames on the walls. Every picture showed smiles, vacations, birthdays, but not one included me. It was like I'd been erased from their story. In the study, I found the old family piano, the one Alina used to play as a girl. Dust covered the keys now. I pressed one softly, the note trembling in the air before fading into silence. Then I heard it, voices from the hallway. "Alina and Mark." Low, tense, I froze. "We need her signature, Alina. Without it, we can't touch the property," Mark said. "I know," she hissed. "Just give me time, she trusts me." My breath caught. Property, signature, what were they talking about? "I'm already behind on payments," Mark continued. "If we don't get that house, it's over." My knees weakened. I clutched the piano for balance. They stopped talking when they heard footsteps. I quickly turned toward the window, pretending to admire the view as Alina entered. "Oh, Mom, didn't know you were here," she said, smiling tightly. "I was just remembering the past," I replied, forcing calm into my voice. She nodded, her eyes flicking toward the study door where Mark had disappeared. "You should rest. Daniel's been asking for you." I smiled, though my hands were trembling. As she left, I stared at the closed door and whispered to myself, "What are you planning, Alina?" That evening, I sat in the garden with Daniel. The air smelled of rain-soaked earth. The tree he'd drawn stood proudly at the corner of the yard, branches bending slightly in the wind. "Grandma," he said softly, "why does Mom get so angry when you're around?" The question cut through me. "Oh, sweetheart, grown-ups have a way of keeping their hearts locked up when they're hurt." "Did you hurt her?" he asked innocently. I looked at him for a long moment. "Maybe, I think we both did." He leaned against me, small and warm. "I don't want you to go back home." I smiled sadly. "Why not?" "Because when you're here, Mom talks more, and you make the house softer." That word, softer, stayed with me long after he went to bed. Later, as I sat by the window, the lights of the city flickered in the distance like dying stars. My reflection looked back at me, tired eyes, lined skin, a face that had carried too many years of regret. I thought of Daniel's words, of Alina's coldness, of Mark's sharp tone. I thought of the papers I hadn't seen but already feared. Something was coming. I could feel it, like thunder just before the storm. And yet, somewhere beneath the unease, a small hope flickered. Maybe this visit could mend what was broken. Maybe love, even late, could still find a way home. But deep down, I already knew. Some homes don't welcome love anymore. Still, as I turned off the light and whispered a prayer for my daughter and grandson, I made myself believe, just for one more night, that tomorrow might be different. Morning crept into the house like an uninvited guest, soft at first, then sharp and revealing. The golden light slipped through the tall windows, settling on the spotless marble floors and silent photographs. Everything about Alina's home was perfect, almost painfully so, the kind of perfection that hides cracks beneath its shine. I watched her from the kitchen doorway. She moved around like a shadow dressed in elegance, coffee in hand, phone pressed to her ear, eyes scanning her tablet. Her every movement screamed control, yet her hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. "Daniel, eat your breakfast properly," she said without looking up. No crumbs on the counter this time. Yes, Mom, Daniel murmured, his small shoulders hunched as he tried to please her. Good morning, I said quietly, stepping in. She glanced up, forcing a smile. Morning, Mom, did you sleep well? I nodded, even though I hadn't. The bed was comfortable. That's good. She returned to her phone. I have a meeting at 9, then a client lunch. Mark's out all day too. You'll have the house to yourself. Her words sounded like freedom, but I knew better. Empty houses carry ghosts louder than people do. Daniel finished his cereal and came running to me. Grandma, can we go to the park later? Alina sighed, eyes still glued to her screen. Daniel, Grandma needs to rest. She's not young anymore. I'm fine, I said quickly, smiling at him. We'll go, just for a little while. Alina looked at me, her eyes sharp now, no trace of the forced warmth from moments before. Just don't overdo it. I don't want her catching a cold and blaming me. Blaming her? The words stung more than she knew. I lowered my gaze and nodded. Of course, dear. After she left, the silence she'd built around herself lingered like perfume, sweet but suffocating. The housekeeper, a quiet woman named Maria, appeared to clear the breakfast table. Her eyes met mine briefly, soft with sympathy, but she didn't speak. You've been here long, I asked. 5 years, ma'am, she said softly. Mrs. Alina likes things organized. I smiled faintly. Yes, she always did. Maria hesitated, glancing toward the stairs as if afraid someone might be listening. She's changed a lot these years. Life been hard for her. I nodded. I can see that. She wanted to say more, I could tell, but instead she just offered a polite smile and left, her shoes whispering against the tiles. Later, Daniel and I went to the park. It was a small one, tucked behind rows of glass buildings, an oasis of green in a sea of gray. The air smelled of grass and children's laughter. Grandma, push me higher, Daniel laughed as I pushed his swing. His joy was infectious, like sunlight breaking through clouds. I watched him, his laughter mixing with the wind, and I felt something stir in me, a warmth I hadn't felt in years. For a brief moment, I forgot the cold house, the whispers, the tension. Grandma, he said suddenly, as the swing slowed. Mom cries sometimes at night, I hear her. My hands froze. She cries. He nodded solemnly. She goes to the balcony. I can see her shadow through the curtains. I swallowed hard. Did she ever tell you why? He shook his head. She says it's nothing, but I think she's sad, maybe because she misses Grandpa. His innocence tore something open in me. I blinked back tears, forcing a smile. Maybe. Adults get sad too, you know. Sometimes we just forget how to say it out loud. He leaned his head against my arm. I wish you and Mom didn't fight. When you fight, everything feels cold. I exhaled shakily. Me too, sweetheart, me too. When we returned, the house was quiet again. Mark's car was in the driveway. Inside, his voice drifted from the study, low and tense. I told you, Alina, this won't wait forever. Her voice sharp but tired. I'm trying, Mark. She's just arrived. I can't push her immediately. I froze near the hallway. The words hit me like shards of glass. Mark's tone grew colder. You think I like this? Do you know how humiliating it is to live off debts? We need that property signed over. It's our only way out. I know, she said, her voice trembling now, but she's my mother. There was silence, then a dull thud like a hand hitting a wall. She's your ticket, Alina. Don't get sentimental now. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. My fingers shook as I pressed them against the wall for balance. Their voices faded as I quietly turned away, every step heavier than the last. Daniel ran up just then, holding a toy airplane, and I quickly forced a smile. Grandma, look, it can fly. Beautiful, I whispered, crouching down to hug him, hiding my trembling. Absolutely beautiful. That evening, Alina acted as if nothing had happened. She served dinner with her usual grace, her voice calm and practiced. Mark joined us, pretending to laugh at Daniel's stories. I watched them both, the way they avoided each other's eyes, the way their smiles never reached their faces. The table was full of food, yet there was no appetite for anything real. Alina, I said gently, I walked by the study today. I hope I wasn't interrupting anything. She froze for just a second before answering, her tone careful. Oh, nothing important, just work. Mark's jaw tightened. Business, he added curtly. Daniel looked between us, sensing the tension he couldn't name. Grandma, are you staying for Christmas? The question broke through the stiffness of the room. I smiled softly. Would you like me to? Yes, we can decorate the tree together. Elena's fork clinked against her plate. We'll see, Daniel. Grandma might have other plans. No, I said quietly, eyes locked on hers. I think I'll stay. For the first time that night, her composure cracked. Her eyes flickered, fear, guilt, maybe both, before she forced another smile. Of course, we'd love that. But we both knew she didn't mean it. Later that night, I found Daniel asleep on the couch, his little airplane clutched in his hand. I covered him with a blanket and turned off the TV. As I walked past the study, I saw light spilling through the crack in the door. Elena was inside, sitting at the desk, her hands covering her face. Papers were scattered everywhere. Elena, I whispered, stepping inside. She looked up startled, her eyes were red. Mom, you scared me. I'm sorry, I said softly. You've been crying. She laughed weakly. Just stress, it's nothing. Work. Something like that. I walked closer, my gaze falling on the papers on the desk. Property forms, my name printed neatly at the top. Elena, I said quietly, my heart pounding, why is my name on these? Her face went pale. It's complicated. Then make it simple, I said. Tell me the truth. She hesitated, then looked away. It's just a precaution, some legal restructuring for the estate. Mark said it's better if everything's under one name for tax reasons. I stared at her. You expect me to believe that? She bit her lip, eyes glistening. Mom, please, not now, I can't. Does Daniel know? I asked. Her head snapped up. What? Of course not, don't bring him into this. The air between us turned thick with everything unsaid. Elena, I whispered, my voice trembling, whatever this is, I need to know. Don't make me your enemy again. Her eyes softened for a moment, and I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who clung to me during thunderstorms. But then it vanished. You wouldn't understand, she said coldly. You never did. The words cut deep, old wounds reopening. She turned away, her voice low and tired. Just trust me, okay? For once. I stood there for a long moment, the silence screaming between us before I finally nodded. I'll try. But inside, I already knew trust was the one thing she couldn't afford from me anymore. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling again, but this time the quiet wasn't peaceful. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind outside felt like a whisper of warning. I thought of Elena's trembling hands, Mark's cold voice, Daniel's innocence caught between them. The weight of secrets pressed down like a stone on my chest. In the darkness, I whispered a prayer I hadn't said in years. Please, don't let me lose her again. The wind outside howled softly, and somewhere in the house, a door creaked open and shut. I closed my eyes and felt the loneliness settle in again, familiar, heavy, unyielding. Tomorrow, I told myself, I would find out everything. But part of me feared the truth already. Because sometimes, when love decays, it doesn't die quietly, it takes everything with it. The days that followed passed in uneasy quiet. The kind of quiet that hums beneath the surface, pretending to be peace but trembling with something darker. Every morning, Elena left early, her heels clicking down the hall like a countdown I couldn't escape. Mark left not long after, his voice echoing in the driveway as he barked instructions into his phone. Daniel would wave from the window as the gate shut behind them, and for a few blissful hours, the house belonged to me. But even then, it didn't feel like home. The walls watched me. Every ticking clock sounded like a warning. The more I looked around, the more I realized that nothing in this place carried warmth, just expensive taste and emptiness. One afternoon, while tidying my room, I found an old photograph tucked inside a drawer. It was us, me, Elena, and her father, David, standing in front of our old wooden house. Elena was maybe 10, grinning with missing front teeth, her small hand gripping mine. Behind us stood the old oak tree, its branches wide and protective. My fingers traced David's face. His smile was gentle, the kind that made people trust him instantly. "You'd know what to do," I whispered to the photo. "You know how to fix this." The truth was, I didn't know how we had fallen so far apart. Elena used to be my reason to keep breathing after David died. I worked myself to the bone for her. I remember walking in the snow to double shifts at the diner, my hands numb, my heart clinging to the thought of her sleeping safe at home. But she never saw the sacrifices, only the absences. When David got sick, I sold my jewelry to pay for his treatments. Alina was 15, angry and scared. She didn't understand why I couldn't save him, why I had to sell our car, why the world had taken her father and left me behind. The night after the funeral, she screamed that it was my fault, that I had let him die. I still hear her voice from that night sometimes, raw and full of hatred. "You didn't fight hard enough, Mom. You let him go." And I said things too, things a mother should never say. I told her she was selfish, that she didn't understand what it meant to carry a family, that she was just a child. I should have held her. I should have told her we'd survive. But instead, we broke each other that night, and neither of us ever really healed. "Grandma." Daniel's small voice pulled me out of the past. He stood at the doorway, holding a half-eaten apple. "Are you crying?" he asked, his brows furrowing. I quickly wiped my eyes and smiled. No, just remembering old times. He climbed onto my lap without invitation, resting his head on my shoulder. "Mom said Grandpa was brave. Were you brave too?" The question caught me off guard. "I tried to be," I said softly. He nodded thoughtfully. "Then why does Mom always look sad when she talks about him?" I hesitated, because sometimes bravery doesn't save the people we love, and that kind of sadness never really leaves. He was quiet for a while, tracing circles on my arm with his finger. Then he whispered, "I wish I could have met him." Tears filled my eyes again. "He would have loved you more than anything, Daniel." That evening, I decided to make dinner. Something simple, something warm. The smell of stew filled the kitchen, thick and familiar, the kind of scent that wraps around your heart and reminds you what love used to feel like. When Alina came home, she paused in the doorway, surprised. "You cooked." "I thought it might be nice," I said, stirring the pot. "Like old times." She forced a small smile. "You didn't have to, I would have ordered something." "I know," I replied quietly. "That's the problem." She blinked, unsure how to respond. Mark came in behind her, loosening his tie. He sniffed the air and said, "Smells traditional." I ignored the insult hidden in his tone. We sat down to eat, and for a brief moment, I could almost pretend we were a family again. Daniel giggled, talking about his school art project. Alina tried to listen, though her eyes kept flicking to her phone. Mark barely said a word. Halfway through dinner, I noticed Alina's hand tremble slightly as she reached for her glass. "Alina," I said gently, "are you all right?" She blinked, startled. "I'm fine." "You look pale. You've been working too much." She gave a weak laugh. "If I stop working, everything falls apart." "Maybe some things are already falling apart," I said quietly. Her fork clinked against the plate. The table went still. Mark looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Just that exhaustion can make people do desperate things." Alina's eyes flashed with warning. "Mom, don't start." I held her gaze. "I'm not starting anything, dear. I'm just worried." She pushed back her chair abruptly. "I'm done." She walked away, her heels clicking down the hall. Mark exhaled heavily and followed her without a word. Daniel looked at me, confused and sad. "Why does Mom get so mad?" I smiled softly, my heart breaking for him. "Because she's scared, darling, that's all." Later that night, unable to sleep, I wandered into the hallway. The house was dark except for a faint light spilling from the study door again. Voices, low, urgent. "Mark, you think she suspects." "Alina, maybe. She's not stupid, Mark." "Mark, then hurry up before she changes her mind." My pulse quickened. Alina sighed. "It's not that simple. She's sentimental about that house. It's where Dad." "Stop," Mark snapped. "Enough with the dead man. He's gone. That house is our only chance to fix this mess." I could barely breathe. He continued, his voice a low growl. "You said she's sick. Old. She doesn't need it. Get the papers signed and end this." Something inside me shattered. Alina didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "You think I haven't tried? I can't just, she's my mother." "Then act like it," Mark hissed. "Do what's necessary." I stepped back, tears stinging my eyes. My legs felt weak. I turned and hurried to my room, closing the door as quietly as I could. My heart pounded in my ears. So it was true. They wanted the house. My husband's house, our home, the last piece of him that remained. I sat on the bed, shaking. I felt like the walls were closing in, the air too heavy to breathe. I pressed my hands to my chest, whispering to myself like a prayer. Why, Alina, why? Memories flooded in, the nights I stayed up mending her clothes, the mornings I skipped meals so she could eat, the letters I wrote her when she moved away, never answered. And now this. The betrayal burned so deep, it almost didn't feel real. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at nothing. Then, slowly, my eyes drifted to the window. The moonlight spilled across the yard, lighting the old oak tree. I thought about how deep its roots must run, how it had survived storms, drought, and time itself. Maybe I could too. The next day, I decided to confront her, not with anger, but truth. Alina was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I entered, surprised. "Morning, Mom." I sat down across from her. "We need to talk." Her smile faded. "About what?" "About the house." Her fingers froze. "What about it?" "I know you and Mark are planning something." Color drained from her face. "Who told you that?" "I heard you," I said softly, "last night." For a moment, she looked like a frightened child again. Then her expression hardened. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand," I whispered. Her eyes glistened. "We're in debt, Mom. Mark's business failed last year. We're drowning. The only thing left of value is your house. If we sell it, we can pay everything off, start over." I stared at her. "So you brought me here to take it from me?" She flinched. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Alina?" My voice broke. "You want to erase your father's memory, the home he built for us." Tears filled her eyes. "Don't make me feel worse than I already do. Then stop doing things you'll regret." Silence filled the room, raw, suffocating. She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "You think I wanted this? You think I'm proud of it? I hate what I've become, Mom, but life doesn't give you second chances." I looked at her trembling shoulders and felt the anger drain away, replaced by something even heavier, grief. "You had your second chance," I said quietly. "It was me." She looked up, eyes red and broken. "I'm sorry." But sorry wasn't enough. Still, I reached out, placing my hand over hers. Her fingers were cold, shaking. For the first time in years, she didn't pull away. In that moment, I realized something painful. Love doesn't die because of betrayal. It dies because we stop trying to save it. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The storm outside rattled the windows, lightning flashing across the garden. I sat in bed, watching shadows dance on the wall. I knew what I had to do. If saving her meant losing everything I had left, then so be it. Because no matter how deep the wounds ran, she was still my daughter. And mothers, we love even when it destroys us. The morning after our confrontation, the air in the house felt heavier, thicker somehow, as though it carried the weight of all the words we hadn't said. I moved through the halls quietly, each step echoing against the marble floors like a confession. Alina had left early again. Mark's car was gone too. Only Daniel's laughter echoed faintly from upstairs, playing with his toys before school. I stood at the bottom of the staircase, looking up, wondering how such innocence could survive in a house built on so many lies. Maria, the housekeeper, entered the living room with her mop and bucket. She looked startled when she saw me. "Good morning, ma'am. You're up early." "I couldn't sleep," I said softly. "Maria, can I ask you something?" She hesitated, glancing toward the door. "If it's about breakfast, I'll—" "It's not," I interrupted gently. "It's about my daughter." Her eyes darted toward the stairs, then back to me. "Mrs. Alina doesn't like when we talk about family matters." "I know," I said, "but you've been here for years, you must have seen things." She lowered her gaze. "I shouldn't say." "Please," I whispered. "I'm her mother. I need to understand what's happening to her." Maria's lips trembled before she finally spoke, her voice low. "They argue a lot, every night, about money, about the house. Mr. Mark, he can be cruel when he drinks." My stomach tightened. "Cruel how?" Her eyes glistened. "Words mostly, but once—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "She loves you, ma'am, but she's trapped. He knows things, controls everything." I stood there frozen as her words sank in. The ground beneath me felt unsteady, like I was standing on the edge of something I didn't want to see. "Thank you," I whispered. "You've told me enough." Maria nodded and left quickly, her eyes full of pity. That afternoon, I went into the study again. The rain had started, light but persistent, whispering against the windows. The desk was cluttered with papers, Elena's handwriting neat and precise, Mark's scrawled signatures next to hers. I scanned through them, my fingers trembling, until one folder caught my eye. It was labeled Property Transfer, Taylor Residence. I hesitated. My heart told me to leave it alone, but another part of me, the part that had survived heartbreak, loss, and years of silence, needed to know. I opened it. Inside were legal documents, titles, forms, notary signatures, all prepared, all waiting for one thing: my signature. The words blurred as I read them: transfer of ownership, permanent relinquishment of property rights. I felt my knees give out, the world spinning around me. My husband's voice echoed in my mind from that night long ago, frail and loving. "Promise me, Claire, promise me you'll never let them sell our home. It's where we built our life. It's all that's left of us." I pressed my trembling hand to my mouth to stop the sobs from escaping. My daughter, my only child, she was doing this to me. "Grandma." I jumped. Daniel stood at the door, his small face full of concern. "Are you okay?" I quickly wiped my tears. "I'm fine, darling, just looking through some papers." He walked closer, peering at the folder. "Mom said those are important." I smiled weakly. "Yes, they are." He frowned. "You're crying again." I pulled him into my arms, holding him tightly, too tightly. "I just missed you, that's all." He hugged me back. "Then don't cry, you can stay with us forever." Forever, such a simple word from such a small mouth. I smiled, brushing his hair back. "Go get ready for school, sweetheart." As he ran off, I turned back to the papers, my tears falling freely now. When Alina came home that evening, she looked exhausted. Her eyes were red, her lipstick smudged, her blouse wrinkled. I sat at the table waiting, the folder beside me. She froze when she saw it. "Mom, what are you doing with that?" I said nothing at first, just looked at her, the girl I had raised, the woman I could barely recognize. "Alina," I said softly, "is this what you meant by starting over?" Her lips parted, but no words came. "You wanted my signature. You wanted to take the house. And you were going to let me believe you invited me here because you missed me." Tears welled in her eyes. "Mom, please." "Why, Alina?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you just ask? Do you think I would have said no?" She dropped her bag, stepping closer. "I didn't want to hurt you." I laughed bitterly. "And yet you did, worse than anyone ever could." Her face crumpled. "I didn't know what else to do. Mark's business collapsed. The loans are in my name. If we don't pay soon, we'll lose everything. Daniel, his school. So you'd take everything from me instead." "Mom," she shouted, her voice breaking. "I have a son. I can't let him grow up the way I did." Her words hit me like a slap. "The way you did? You think I didn't give you everything I had?" She shook her head violently, tears streaming now. "You gave me survival, not love. You worked yourself sick, but you were never there. You think I wanted money? I wanted you." The truth of it stunned me into silence. She collapsed into the chair across from me, sobbing. "When Dad died, you disappeared. You were there, but you were. I needed my mother, not a ghost." My own tears spilled. I thought I was doing what was right. I thought if I worked hard, I could fill the hole he left. "Well, you did," she cried. "You just left another one." The room fell into a painful stillness. Only the rain outside filled the silence, steady and relentless. Then quietly she whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her, the fragile, broken woman who still carried the child she used to be. And in that moment, the anger inside me softened. "Alina," I said gently, reaching across the table to take her hand, "you don't have to fight alone anymore. But don't ask me to bury your father's memory to save you." She gripped my hand tightly, her tears falling onto our intertwined fingers. "What choice do I have?" My heart ached. "There's always a choice, my love. You just have to live with the one you make." That night, I sat by the window in the guest room, staring at the dark outline of the old oak tree. I could see my reflection faintly, an old woman with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. I thought about David again, about his quiet strength, about how proud he was when we finally bought that house, how he painted Daniel's nursery before he ever existed. And now, our daughter wanted to sell it for survival. I couldn't hate her, I wanted to. But every time I saw her tear-stained face, every time I heard the exhaustion in her voice, I remembered being her age, terrified, broke, clinging to hope like a thread. Maybe this was her storm to survive. The next morning, I found Alina in the kitchen, making coffee. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Mom," she whispered, "I didn't sleep." "Neither did I." We stood there for a long moment in silence. Then she said, "Mark wants to meet you today, about the papers." "I know," I said. She looked startled. "You're still considering it?" I didn't answer, I just smiled sadly. Let's see how the day goes. Mark arrived just after lunch. He greeted me with false warmth, the kind of charm that barely hid contempt. "Mrs. Taylor," he said smoothly, setting a briefcase on the table. "I'm glad we can finally settle this." I didn't respond. I watched his hands as he pulled out the documents, sleek and official, and placed a pen beside them. Alina stood nearby, pale and silent. Mark looked at me, smiling. "You understand, of course, this is purely procedural. It'll make things easier for everyone." "For everyone," I repeated quietly. Interesting choice of words. He frowned slightly. "I mean the family." I picked up the pen, rolling it between my fingers. My hand trembled. "I built that house with my husband, brick by brick. We ate beans for months to afford the first payment. We planted that tree outside together." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, well, times change." "Yes," I said, "they do." I looked at Alina then. Her eyes begged me not to do it. Or maybe she didn't know what she wanted anymore. My throat tightened. "If I sign this, promise me one thing." Alina blinked. "Anything." "Take care of Daniel. Don't let him grow up thinking love is something you trade for survival." Tears filled her eyes again. "I promise." I smiled faintly. "Good." Then I signed. Each stroke of the pen felt like a blade carving through memory. By the time I was done, my vision blurred. Mark grinned, relief flashing across his face. "Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. You've done the right thing." He gathered the papers quickly, already reaching for his phone. I didn't look at him again. Alina stood frozen. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Mom, why did you?" I placed a hand on her cheek. "Because a mother's love isn't about winning, my dear. It's about losing gracefully." She started to cry, and I pulled her into my arms, holding her like I should have years ago. "You'll understand one day," I whispered, "when Daniel looks at you the way you used to look at me." That night I sat on the porch, the signed papers gone, the air heavy with quiet. Daniel came to me, holding his blanket. "Grandma, are you sad?" I smiled weakly, a little. "Did Mom make you sad?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, life did." He frowned. "Then why are you crying?" I kissed his forehead. "Because sometimes love hurts even when you do the right thing." He leaned against me, yawning. "You're the best person I know." My chest tightened. I whispered softly, "I hope one day your mother thinks the same." As he drifted to sleep beside me, I stared out at the old tree swaying gently in the wind. Its roots ran deep, just like mine. And though I'd lost everything, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. A fragile, fleeting peace that only comes when you finally stop fighting the inevitable. The next few days blurred together like an old film reel, grainy, flickering, full of moments that didn't feel entirely real. After signing the papers, I tried to convince myself I had done the right thing. I told myself it was for Alina, for Daniel, for the family I'd already lost once. But every morning, when I opened my eyes, guilt greeted me before sunlight did. The house felt colder now. The air itself seemed heavier, as if it knew what I had done. I'd given away the last piece of my past. The walls that had once heard laughter and lullabies now stood silent, waiting for strangers to claim them. Alina moved around like a ghost, avoiding my gaze. I could tell she was torn between relief and shame. Sometimes, I'd catch her staring at me when she thought I wasn't looking, her eyes full of something unspoken, something fragile. Mark, on the other hand, was suddenly all smiles. He spoke to me with a politeness so thick it felt like mockery. "Mrs. Taylor," he said one evening at dinner, You have no idea how much this means to us. You've given our family a second chance." I forced a smile. "I hope you use it wisely." "Oh, we will," he replied, his grin sharp and hollow. Alina didn't say a word the entire meal. That night, I sat on the porch again. The stars were faint behind a curtain of clouds. Daniel came out with his blanket, dragging it across the floor. "Grandma, you're awake again," he said, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Couldn't sleep," I smiled faintly. "Come here, love." He climbed onto my lap, resting his head against my chest. I could feel his small heartbeat, steady and pure, against my tired heart. "I heard Mom and Dad fighting," he murmured. My chest tightened. "Oh, Daniel." "She said she didn't want to sell something, but Dad said it's too late. He said Grandma signed it already." Tears stung my eyes. "You shouldn't have to hear things like that, sweetheart." He lifted his head, frowning. "What did you sign?" I brushed his hair from his face. "Something important, something that will help your parents." He shook his head fiercely. "But what about you, Grandma? Where will you live?" I hesitated. "I'll find somewhere." "No," he said firmly, his voice trembling. "You have to stay with us." I smiled through my tears. "Oh, Daniel, sometimes love means letting go, even when it hurts." He threw his arms around my neck, crying into my shoulder. "I don't want you to go." I held him tightly, whispering, "SHH, it's okay, my darling. Everything I've done for you and your mom. One day you'll understand." He sniffled, looking up at me. "Promise me you won't go." My throat closed. "I can't promise that, sweetheart." "Why not?" "Because sometimes life doesn't let us stay where we want to. Sometimes it takes us where we need to be." He didn't understand. How could he? But he nodded anyway, his little hands gripping mine. That night, after I tucked him into bed, I stood by his door for a long time, listening to the sound of his soft breathing. I wanted to memorize it, the rhythm of innocence, of peace. Because I knew soon I would have to leave it behind. The next morning, I started packing quietly. A few clothes, my old photo album, David's watch, nothing else. The rest, the jewelry, the china, even my husband's books, belonged to Alina now. As I folded my clothes, my hands trembled. Each item carried a memory. The scarf David bought me on our 20th anniversary, the sweater Alina knitted for me as a teenager, the faded shawl I wore the day Daniel was born. Every piece of fabric felt like a goodbye. Maria found me in the room later, standing over the half-packed suitcase. Her eyes widened. "Ma'am, are you leaving?" I nodded slowly. "It's time." "But why, Mrs. Alina?" "She'll be fine," I said softly. "She has what she needs now." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "You're a good mother." I smiled sadly. Maybe too good, or maybe not enough. She stepped forward, taking my hand. "If you go, Daniel will be heartbroken." I swallowed hard. "I know, but if I stay, his mother will be too." That evening, I sat down to write a letter, one for Alina, one for Daniel. My hands shook as I wrote, the ink blotting where my tears fell. "My dearest Alina, I know you may never understand why I did what I did. You'll think I gave up too easily, that I was weak. But one day, when you are my age, you'll realize that love is not about keeping, it's about giving. I gave you the best years of my life, and now I've given you the only home I had left. I hope you fill it with warmth again, with laughter, with forgiveness. Please don't hate me for leaving. I need peace now, and I think you do too. Take care of Daniel. Teach him kindness. Teach him to love fiercely, even when it hurts. That's what will make him strong. Love always. Mom." The second letter was shorter. "My sweet Daniel. Never stop believing that love can heal anything, even broken hearts, even lost homes. You are my greatest joy. When you look at the stars, know that I'll be looking too. Love forever. Grandma." I folded the letters and placed them on the kitchen table. Weighed down with a small glass paperweight David had once carved himself. Just before dawn, I stepped outside. The air was cool and damp, the sky streaked with faint gold. The old oak tree swayed gently in the morning breeze. I placed my hand on its rough bark, feeling the heartbeat of the earth beneath it. "Goodbye," I whispered. A single leaf fell, landing at my feet. I picked it up, pressed it between my palms, and slipped it into my pocket. I turned toward the gate, my suitcase in hand. The world was still asleep. I took one last look at the house, the windows glowing faintly as the first light of day touched them. For a moment, I thought I saw David standing there, in the reflection, smiling the way he used to. Then I heard a voice. "Grandma." I turned. Daniel was at the doorway, barefoot, his hair messy, his pajamas rumpled. He ran down the path, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Don't go back home," he cried, his voice breaking. "Please, Grandma, don't go." My heart stopped. I knelt as he threw himself into my arms. His tiny body shook as he sobbed against my shoulder. "Why are you leaving? Did I do something wrong?" "Oh, sweetheart, no," I whispered, stroking his hair. "You did everything right." "Then stay," he pleaded. "We can fix it. I'll tell Mom to say sorry." I smiled through my tears. "It's not that simple, my love." He shook his head, gripping my face between his hands. "I don't care, I just want you here." My chest ached so deeply I thought it might break. I held him close one last time, breathing in the scent of soap and innocence, and whispered, "You'll understand one day, Daniel. When love asks you to choose between your heart and your peace." I kissed his forehead and gently pushed him back toward the house. "Go inside, sweetheart, it's cold." He shook his head, crying harder. "I'll wait for you, you'll come back, right?" I couldn't answer. I just smiled, my tears falling freely now. As I turned and walked away, his voice echoed behind me. "Grandma, don't go back home." I looked up at the sky, blinking through tears. His words burned through the morning air, a plea I'd carry with me for the rest of my life. At the station, the train arrived with a mournful whistle. I stood on the platform, the letter of goodbye still warm in my pocket. My hands shook as I boarded, my reflection catching in the glass, an old woman leaving behind everything she'd ever loved. As the train began to move, I looked out at the horizon. The sun was rising, painting the clouds gold and crimson. I whispered softly, "Forgive me, David. I kept my promise the only way I knew how." The house grew smaller in the distance until it vanished completely. And as I pressed my hand against the window, a quiet realization washed over me. Sometimes love doesn't save you, it saves the ones you leave behind. The tears came then, unstoppable, but for the first time I didn't fight them, I let them fall. Because love, in its purest form, is the act of surrender. And I had finally surrendered everything. The train rattled through the morning fog, carrying me farther from the house that once held my entire life. I thought leaving would bring peace, an end to the ache that had lived in my chest for years, but as the scenery blurred past, I felt only emptiness. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels became a lullaby for my regrets. Faces and voices haunted me in the glass, David's gentle smile, Elena's tear-streaked face, Daniel's desperate cry, "Don't go back home." I pressed my hand against the window, whispering to no one, "I didn't go back, sweetheart, but I don't know if that makes me brave or a coward." The countryside unfolded in shades of gray and gold, beautiful in its loneliness. I watched the towns pass, the smoke curling from chimneys, people walking to places they belonged. And all I could think was, I no longer belonged anywhere. Hours later, the train stopped in a small town I barely remembered. The same one where David and I had once stayed for a weekend after our wedding. I decided to get off there. The air was crisp and smelled faintly of pine. I walked to a modest inn near the station, a quaint little place with ivy creeping along the walls and a wooden sign that creaked in the wind. The woman at the front desk smiled kindly, though her eyes flickered with curiosity at the sight of my tear-stained face. "Just one night, ma'am?" she asked. "Yes," I said softly, "just one night." She handed me the key and said, "Room 6 up the stairs. Breakfast at 7. The room was small, one bed, one window, one old rocking chair. I placed my suitcase on the floor and sat by the window, staring out at the fading light. I should have felt relief, freedom, but instead, my heart felt hollow, as if I had left a piece of it behind in that house, or perhaps in the arms of a little boy who didn't understand why love sometimes means leaving. I didn't notice how late it had grown until the phone on the nightstand rang. I jumped, startled. Who would call me here? "Hello? Mom." Elena's voice, small, shaking. My throat tightened. "Elena, how did you?" "Maria told me where you were headed. Mom, listen, you have to come back, please." Her words rushed through the receiver, tangled with panic. "What's wrong?" I asked, dread curling in my gut. There was silence for a moment. Then, in a trembling whisper, she said, "It's Mark." I gripped the phone tighter. "What about him?" "He's gone. He took the money, the papers, everything. He sold the house already. Mom, he's not coming back." For a moment I couldn't breathe. "He what?" "I trusted him," she cried. "He told me he just needed to finalize the sale and then we'd pay off the debts. But he vanished. The accounts are empty." The words felt like knives, twisting inside me. "Alina," I whispered, "listen to me carefully. Are you safe?" She was sobbing now. "He left last night after you left. I found out this morning. He even took Daniel's savings, Mom, every last penny." I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth. I should have known. I did know. Somewhere deep down, I'd felt it all along, that Mark's smile hid rot, that his words were poisons sweetened with charm. And yet I'd signed the papers anyway. "Alina," I said firmly, "I'm coming back." "No," she said quickly, her voice cracking. "Don't, you've done enough, I don't deserve." "Don't you dare say that," I snapped. "You're my daughter." She started to cry harder. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't know he'd do this. I thought I was saving us, but I ruined everything." Her voice broke into sobs, so raw they reached right into me, tearing open every wound I'd tried to stitch shut. "Listen to me," I said, my own tears falling now. "You didn't ruin everything. You just trusted the wrong person. We'll figure this out together." "Mom." "Stay where you are," I said firmly. "I'll take the next train." When I returned to the city, it was raining. The kind of relentless rain that seeps into your bones. By the time I reached the house, the lights were dim, the front door slightly ajar. The air inside was cold, lifeless. Alina sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by scattered papers. Her eyes were swollen, her hair unkempt. When she saw me, she broke down completely. "Mom," she choked out, crawling into my arms like a child. "He's gone. He sold it all. The house, the land, everything." I held her tightly, my own tears falling into her hair. "SHH, it's all right." "No, it's not," she screamed. "We have nothing. He took everything you gave us, everything." I looked around the room. The shelves were bare, the drawers open. The place already felt stripped of soul. Even the piano in the study, the one David had played for her as a girl, was gone. "How could he do this?" she whispered. "How could I let him?" I stroked her back gently. "Because you loved him, and when we love, we believe, even when we shouldn't." She pulled away, her face streaked with tears. "I destroyed everything you and Dad built. You told me not to do it, and I still." "Alina," I interrupted softly, "stop. What's done is done." Her voice broke again. "You should hate me." "I could never hate you," I said, my own voice trembling. "I might hate what you did, but never you." She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in years, I saw my daughter. The little girl who used to run barefoot through the garden, who used to bring me wildflowers from the field. "Mom," she whispered, "how can you forgive me?" "Because I remember what it feels like to be lost." That night, Daniel sat quietly beside me, his little hands clutching mine. He had been crying too, though he tried to hide it. "Is Dad coming back?" he asked softly. I hesitated. "No, sweetheart, I don't think he is." He blinked up at me, confused. "But Mom said he loved us." "He did, in his own way," I said gently. "But sometimes love isn't enough to keep people kind." He frowned, processing that. "Does that mean love is bad?" I smiled sadly. "No, my darling, it means love is complicated." He leaned against me, sighing. "Then I don't want to love when I grow up. It just makes people cry." My throat tightened. "Oh, Daniel, love is what makes life worth the pain. Don't ever give it up." He looked up at me, his eyes glimmering with tears. "Like you love Mom." "Yes," I whispered, "exactly like that." The next morning, the police came. Alina had filed a report, though deep down, we both knew Mark wouldn't be found. Men like him didn't disappear, they started over, somewhere else with someone new. The house would be gone soon. The buyers were already arranging the final paperwork. Alina packed what little we had left, clothes, photographs, a few keepsakes. When she handed me David's watch, I shook my head. "Keep it." "But it was his," she said softly. "And now it's yours. You're still part of him, Alina. No mistake will ever change that." She clutched it to her chest, sobbing again. We left that day with only a few boxes and broken hearts. As we walked down the driveway for the last time, I turned back one final time. The house stood silent, its windows reflecting gray clouds. The old oak tree swayed in the wind, its branches heavy with rain. It looked almost alive, as if it were mourning with us. I whispered, "Goodbye, my love." We moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Elena found a job at a local office. Daniel changed schools. I started cooking again, small meals, simple, but filled with warmth. One evening, as I stood at the stove, Elena came up behind me. "Mom," she said quietly. "Yes." "I don't deserve this. You should have left me." I turned, wiping my hands. "I could never leave you." She shook her head. "After everything I did, you still came back. You saved me." I smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart, you saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could." Tears welled in her eyes. "I wish Dad were here. He'd be proud of you." I placed a hand on her cheek. "No, my dear, he'd be proud of you." That night, after Daniel fell asleep, Elena and I sat on the balcony. The city lights flickered below like stars scattered across the ground. "Mom," she said softly, "do you ever regret it, signing the papers, giving it all away?" I stared out into the night, the cool air brushing my face. "Every day, and not at all." She frowned. "How can it be both?" "Because regret and love are sisters," I said. "They live in the same heart. One reminds you what you've lost, the other reminds you why it was worth losing." She leaned her head on my shoulder, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "I don't deserve you." "You're my daughter," I whispered. "You'll always deserve me." For the first time in years, we sat without anger, without distance. Just two souls finally finding their way back to each other through the ruins of what once was. But even as peace began to settle between us, I couldn't shake Daniel's words from my mind. "Don't go back home." He was right. Home wasn't a place, it was the people we loved. And sometimes, losing everything was the only way to find what truly mattered. Still, as I watched Elena fall asleep on the couch, her hand clutching her father's watch, I couldn't help but whisper into the night, "I wish it didn't have to hurt this much to heal." It had been 3 months since we left the old house. 3 months since the rain, the betrayal, the heartbreak. The air in the small apartment was different, thinner, quieter, but lighter somehow. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was healing. I woke early each morning to make breakfast, just as I used to when Elena was a child. She would come out of her room, hair messy, still half asleep, and for a moment I would see the little girl she once was. She'd smile faintly, embarrassed, as if caught between the woman she'd become and the child she'd lost somewhere along the way. Daniel had grown quieter, more thoughtful. He still asked about his father sometimes, but less and less each week. He was beginning to understand, slowly, that sometimes people leave not because they stop loving you, but because they love themselves too little to stay. Life had settled into a fragile rhythm, yet beneath it, I could feel time tugging at me. My body was weaker now, the nights colder. I'd wake to coughing fits that left me breathless, gripping the edge of the bed until the room stopped spinning. I hadn't told Elena. She'd already carried too much guilt. But I knew my time was running short. One evening, we sat together after dinner, the three of us. Daniel had his head on my lap, half asleep, while Elena sipped tea and stared at the small TV flickering in the corner. "Mom," she said softly, "do you ever miss him, Dad?" "Every day," I said, "but I think he's here, in ways we don't always see." She smiled faintly. "Daniel said he dreams of him sometimes." "I'm not surprised. Your father always kept his promises." She laughed quietly, a sound I hadn't heard in years. "Do you think he'd forgive me, for what I did?" I brushed Daniel's hair gently. "Your father loved you too much to hold on to anger, and so do I." Elena's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink them away, but one slipped down her cheek. "I still see that house in my dreams, the one we lost. I keep walking through the rooms, but everything's empty, and then I wake up and it hurts all over again." I looked at her tenderly. "Some places live inside us long after we leave them. You can't lose them completely." She nodded slowly. "Sometimes I think Daniel saved me. If it weren't for him, I don't know what I'd be." I smiled. Children have a way of saving us without even knowing it. Later that night, when they were both asleep, I sat on the balcony with a blanket around my shoulders. The moon hung low, pale, and patient. The city lights glittered below like a sea of fireflies. I thought about everything that had happened, every choice, every mistake, every wound that had brought me here. Life had taken so much from me, my husband, my home, my health, but it had also given me something far greater. The chance to see my daughter's heart soften again, to hold my grandson and feel his small heartbeat against mine, to learn that love doesn't end with loss. It simply changes shape. A soft breeze brushed my face, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. I closed my eyes and whispered into the wind, "Thank you, David, for everything." A few days later, Alina came home early, her face pale. "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked, seeing the medicine on the table. I smiled faintly, "Just a little tired, that's all." She picked up the bottle, reading the label. Her eyes widened. "These are for your heart. How long have you?" "Alina," I interrupted gently, "please don't worry. I've had these for years." She sank into a chair, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you've been through enough. I didn't want to add to it." She stared at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "You think I care about that? You're all I have left, Mom." I reached for her hand, squeezing it softly. "No, my love, you have Daniel and yourself. You're stronger than you think." She shook her head. "Don't talk like that." "I just want you to be ready," I whispered. "For what?" "For when I'm not here." Her breath hitched. Please don't say that." I smiled sadly. "Alina, we both know I can't stay forever, but you'll be all right. You have a chance to rebuild, to start over." Tears streamed down her face as she buried her head in my lap, just as Daniel often did. "I can't lose you too." I stroked her hair gently, whispering, "You won't lose me. I'll always be here in your heart, in Daniel's laughter, in every kind thing you do." Weeks passed and my health declined quietly. Alina insisted I see a doctor, but I told her it was just fatigue. I didn't want hospitals. I didn't want machines. I just wanted to be at peace. One morning, I found Daniel sitting on the balcony, sketching in his notebook. "What are you drawing?" I asked. He looked up and grinned. "You." I laughed softly. "Oh dear, I hope you made me look younger." He shook his head. "No, you look like you, but happy." I leaned over to see. He had drawn the three of us, me, Alina, and him, standing under a big tree, the old oak tree. My chest tightened. "You remember that tree?" He nodded. "Mom showed me pictures. She said that's where Grandpa used to play his guitar." "Yes," I whispered. "He loved that tree, said its roots were strong because they grew together." Daniel smiled proudly. "That's us, right? We're like that tree." Tears filled my eyes. "Yes, my love, just like that tree." That evening, I wrote one last letter. Not to Alina this time, not even to Daniel, to myself. "Dear Claire, you've carried guilt for too long. For every word left unsaid, for every mistake, for every time love wasn't enough. But tonight, let it go. You did the best you could with what you had. You loved fiercely, even when it broke you. You forgave when it would have been easier to hate, and in the end, that's what matters. You found peace, not in keeping everything, but in letting go. That is your legacy. That is your love." I folded the letter and tucked it inside my old photo album, next to a picture of me and David on our wedding day. That night, I dreamt of the old house. But this time, it wasn't empty. The windows glowed with warm light. David was sitting by the piano, playing softly, and little Alina danced barefoot around the living room, her laughter echoing like bells. When he saw me, he smiled. "You kept your promise," he said. I looked around. "I lost everything, David." He shook his head gently. "No, you gave everything." I wanted to tell him I missed him. I wanted to stay. But then I heard Daniel's voice calling faintly, "Grandma, wake up." And I opened my eyes. The morning light spilled through the curtains. Alina was by my bed, holding my hand. Her eyes were red from crying, but she smiled when she saw me awake. "Good morning," I whispered weakly. She squeezed my hand. "Daniel's making breakfast. He burned the toast, but he said you'd eat it anyway." I chuckled softly. "He's probably right." Her voice trembled. "Mom, I never said thank you for everything." I smiled faintly. "You already have, every day, just by being here." She shook her head. "No, I mean it. I used to think you were cold. but now I know you were strong, you had to be. Tears filled my eyes, and you thought I didn't love you. I was wrong, she whispered. You were the only one who truly did. We sat there in silence, holding hands, the morning sun wrapping us in its quiet warmth. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt at peace. That afternoon, I fell asleep while Daniel read aloud from one of his school books. His voice was soft and sweet, lulling me into dreams. I remember his tiny fingers tracing mine, his lips whispering, "I love you, Grandma." When I drifted off, it felt like floating, like sinking into a memory that was kind. And somewhere, in the distance, I heard the sound of a piano playing. They found me smiling, peaceful, the photo album open beside me, the letter still tucked between its pages. Elena said later that she knew I had finally gone home, not the house we lost, but the one where David was waiting. Daniel placed a small drawing inside my hands before they closed the coffin. It was the same one he'd made on the balcony, the three of us standing under the oak tree. On the back, in his careful handwriting, he'd written, "Love doesn't end, it just grows roots." Years later, Daniel would tell people about me, about the grandmother who taught him that love isn't about keeping, it's about giving, forgiving, and letting go. He visit that old tree, now standing alone on the empty plot where our house once was, and he'd sit beneath it, sketching quietly. Alina would sometimes join him, holding a single wildflower in her hand. She never remarried. She didn't need to. She finally learned that peace isn't found in possessions, but in forgiveness. And every time the wind rustled through the leaves, Daniel would smile. Because he knew. I was there. Watching, listening, loving. Always. Sometimes, I once told him, the hardest part of love is walking away so others can finally learn what it means. And that, in the end, was my truth. My story. My goodbye.